welcome to our very special event today. Welcome on behalf of the Center for Latin American, Caribbean, and Latino Studies. We have a special event. Two Indigenous women leaders, both from Guatemala, are going to speak today. Gladys, Tzul, and Irma, Alicia, Velásquez, Nimatuj. And we have two people who are going to comment on their talks afterwards. Manuela Pic, who is, and all the information will be given to you. The main person who organized this, who is on the faculty here at UMass, is Miriana Cruz, who will be introducing them duly and thoroughly in a moment. I'm just mentioning Manuela Pic, who is at Amherst College, and Nay Morales, who is here. Morales Udon, who was here all the way from Canada, and who was here with us last year as a visiting postdoc fellow. Anyway, I wanted to, before turning it over to Emiliana, I wanted to thank all of our co-sponsors. We have several co-sponsors, including Teacher Education and Curriculum Studies, the College of Ed Student Development, the College of Ed Policy Research and Administration, the Department of Anthropology, Women, Gender, Sexuality Studies, Anthropology, and the Horowitz Endowment, as well as the Center for Latin American, Caribbean, and Latino Studies. Organized as a thing, a classic hat-passing event here at UMass. I also want to thank Gloria Ramos and Carolyn Parker, who helped put this together at the center, and Indiana and Anaí, who imagined this as a symposium last year. We've been thinking about this since, I don't know, last fall, I think. Yeah, last fall. So here it is, finally. So with you, Professor Indiana Cruz. Oh, and I forgot to mention our next event. I stopped the applause for a moment. Is an event commemorating Hispanic Heritage Month. Next Tuesday, Santo de Palo carving. I'll send this around for everyone to see. I encourage you to join us. You won't be here. Emiliana, sorry.
Well, welcome everyone. So why we're here today? Well, we're here today to stimulate a productive dialogue on the topic of collaboration between activism and the academy. For the last decade, the number of indigenous scholars has grown, but only by a very small percentage. There's still a lot of work that needs to be done, and indigenous people can have access to education. An indigenous scholar carries many responsibilities. Some are to their home communities, others to academia. Many indigenous people who achieve higher education often wonder why they chose this path. Then we are reminded that we have a tremendous responsibility to advance social change and justice. In this context, the dialogue we propose is essential to creating solidarity and promoting mutual enrichment between academics and other ways of creating knowledge. Our hope is that such exchange will yield shared questions that could serve as the basis for developing a proposal for future collaboration. We hope to reframe academic discussion and to collectively clarify what we believe to be the core issues at stake. As indigenous scholars, we're able to contribute something important to academia, since our identities and backgrounds give a unique perspective to sociological, political, and anthropological questions. Our speakers today have played the roles of academic and activist. They have achieved high academic standing while also serving as a model for engaged anthropology and sociology. To introduce them, then I will briefly give their biographies, though I can't do their accomplishments justice in such a short introduction. Okay, so we're going to change the order, and first it is going to be Gladys, but now we're going to do Irma. Irma Alicia Velásquez Nimatuj, also a very good friend. And Nimatuj, she's Maya Quiche, anthropologist and award winner of journalism. She worked as a journalist and editor for the newspaper El Nuevo Quetzalteco. Her work seeks to build an academic and political agenda that prioritizes the realization of economic, social, political, cultural, and racial rights of indigenous people and women in Guatemala and Atayala. Also, was born in the city of Quetzaltenango. She earned the master's degree from el Instituto Normal para Señoritas del Occidente and a degree in communication science at the University of San Carlos, Guatemala. She obtained her PhD at the University of Texas in Austin. Her dissertation focused on indigenous people's struggle for the land in Guatemala. She was the first Quiche woman who earned a doctorate in social science in Guatemala as well. Also, she's the author of 2 books, Pueblos Indígenas, Estado y Lucha por la Tierra en Guatemala, Estrategias de Sobrevivencia y Negociación ante la Desigualdad Globalizada, published in 2008. En La Pequeña Burguesía Indígena Comercial de Guatemala, Desigualdades de Clase, Raza y Género, publicado por Servicios Jurídicos Sociales. That was published in 2002. She has also published more than 15 articles. Her work sheds a light on racial oppression and the ways in which violence in Guatemala worked from the 1970s to the 1980s, and also how Mayan identities have been erased. Gladys Tzul. She is a Maya Quiche sociologist and activist. She received her master's in social studies in Latin American politics from the University of Alberto Hurtado in Chile. Her doctoral research at the Autonomous University of Puebla, Mexico, focused on indigenous forms of government and communitarian democracy. She is one of the few Latin American academics who specializes in analyzing Indian government systems that exist in Guatemala, power relations, and the conflicts that arise between local governments and the state authorities. And I just want to welcome Irma and Gladys.
Good afternoon, everybody. First, I would like to thank Professor Emiliana Cruz and the Center of Latin American, Caribbean, and Latino Studies for their kind invitation to the UMass. And for me, it is an honor to be here. Let me begin by sharing with you that in my country, Guatemala, we don't know the exact number of indigenous people because we haven't had a census since 2002. However, projections indicate that we are more than 17 million and probably constitute between 60 or 70% of the total population of the country. Therefore, Guatemala could have more than 10 million of indigenous people, and I am just a one voice. And what I share here with you does not represent the position of the more than 10 million of brothers and sisters, nor it is the voice of the Quiche people, the group I am a member of. What I share is a personal analysis based on my privilege of having access to a college education where I studied journalism and later social anthropology. Also, the reflection of this presentation are based on the admirable struggle of a group of 15 Maya Quechua women from Sepulsarco, one of the 138 villages in the municipality of El Estor in the department of Izabal, located 300 kilometers away from the capital of Guatemala. This is one of the first cases that show how in Guatemala, from 1982 to 1988, the state allowed the army to run aberrant and creepy crimes such as mass rape of indigenous women, including young girls from different ages. Earlier this year, two of the men responsible for these crimes, Coronel Estelmer Reyes Girón and former military commissioner Heriberto Asig, were brought to trial. They were found guilty of crimes against humanity and sentenced to 240 and 120 years in prison. However, as the trial showed, there are many more responsible who have yet to face justice. But before I begin, I want to give a brief overview of my country. Guatemala is a small but highly unequal country. In December 2015, the National Institute of Statistics released the result of the 2014 Survey of Living Conditions, which shows that poverty and extreme poverty have increased considerably. It is estimated that poverty affects more than 10 million people out of a total 17 million. That is more 60% of the total national population is poor, with 3.7 million living in extreme poverty, most of whom are indigenous. In addition, Guatemala is handled by 8 families who control just over 250 companies, arable land, banks, and almost all the Guatemala economy. It is a historical elite that handles all the state for their benefit. This small elite is known as G8. As I mentioned earlier, Guatemala is also an indigenous country, a fact that is often hidden by government officials and census data. It is also a country with acute ideological conflict stemmed from a 36-year civil war from 1960 to 1998, which cost the lives of an estimated 200,000 people. The official UN Truth Commission report published in 1999 estimates that 626 massacres took place during the war, and that over 90% of the violations were committed by the state security forces. Within this conflict, indigenous people and women bore the weight of the violence, since an estimated 83% of the victims were indigenous. Additionally, the report concludes that acts of genocide were committed by the state against the indigenous population. Since 1996, after the end of the civil war, survivors from all around the country have organized to demand justice for themselves and their communities. In 1982, the Guatemala Army installed a military camp in Sepursarco for 3 reasons. First, to provide protection to the life and property of the landowner in that region. Secondly, to dismantle peasant families who were demanding that the state legalize the land where they lived. And third, to prevent the formation of the guerrilla groups in that region. The community lived under Army control until 1988, and during those 6 years, the Army military sexually abused all women and forced them into domestic slavery. All women who were widowed and remained in the community or were captured by the Army during those years were forced to serve in the military camp for periods of 6 to 8 months. The domestic slavery included having to clean the military camp, preparing food for an average of 400 soldiers, washing uniforms, among other responsibilities. Simultaneously, the sexual abuse against women of all ages was committed collectively and individually by soldiers in all areas of military camp, as well as in the homes of the women, on the rivers, on roads, or in the communities surrounding areas. The military camp in Sepulsarco was one of the 6 camps installed in 1982 in the area. All the women survivors that I interviewed agree that the soldiers went into their communities to kill and kidnap most of the men, and in some cases, the older sons. Subsequently, the Army proceeded with the subjugation and control of all surviving women and their young children. It was not until the creation of the National Reparation Program in May 2003 that a weak and contradictory process of compensation began to dignify the victims of the internal conflict of 36 years. It was from the start of that program that some Sepulsarco's women slowly began to speak, partly because many were dying, others getting old and needed to express the emotional trauma experienced. Above all, they were seeking their loved ones. They wanted to find them, to exhume and to bury them. The reparations program also helped with monetary reparations that was symbolic, but for the women living in conditions of poverty worse than before the Civil War, the help meant something. Starting in the year 2003, as more was heard of the sexual atrocities and violation endured by women in the hands of the Army in different regions of the country. Some organizations, such as Women Transforming the World, the National Union of Guatemala Women, the Community Studies and Psychosocial Action Team, National Coordinator of Widows of Guatemala, among others, consider that before the mountain of evidence of sexual violence against women, it was necessary to denounce the atrocities and demand justice for women who were mostly poor, rural, and indigenous. Product of this process, some women organizations conduct an investigation that produced a book called Tejidos que lleva el alma, Memoria de las mujeres mayas sobrevivientes de violación sexual durante el conflicto armado. This was the first book in Guatemala that documented the sexual violence during the Civil War and led to the creation of the first Tribunal of Consciousness against sexual violence of women during the armed conflict in Guatemala in March 2011. The realization of this first tribunal showed, with testimonies from women survivors and expert witnesses from different countries, several violations and atrocities committed by the army in Guatemala in the life of indigenous women from 1960 to 1996. It was in the tribunal where the voices of the women of Sepulsarco gained recognition. The case was especially noteworthy because the region of Sepulsarco was known as a region where there was no presence of guerrilla forces. That is, there was no reason to justify the presence of the army in the region because the families were unarmed civilians. Since the day of that first tribunal, women organizations, activists, and survivors began to build a case against former military commanders of the area. Finally, as a part of the legal process, in September of 2012, 30 years after the crimes took place, for the first time in the history of the country, 15 Quiche women, mostly sick and elderly, hiding their faces and replaced their traditional clothing, cortes and huipiles, for pants and shirts, as a security action, tell their lives and the violation they suffered. With deep dignity, the women spoke about how their lives, their bodies, and their families experienced and endured the brutal years of the armed conflict and demanded justice from the state. What the Quechua women endured need to be situated in the context of historic racism, sexual violence, and poverty that operate alongside the process of colonization that Guatemala has been subject to. The crimes against humanity that these women endured during the Civil War have only been lightly documented. To this date, there is no exactly quantitative data that allow us to know the impact of violence on women's lives and their communities. My approach as an academic and anthropologist with the community began in 2010 with the first Tribunal of Sexual Violence. At that moment, I was approached to carry out an expert witness report about how sexual violence transformed the lives and communities of the indigenous women. That work led me to work and draft a report of how the culture of the community of Sepulsarco changed after the sexual and domestic violence began. I worked on this from December 2011 to June 2013. My experience as a Quiche researcher allowed me to access a wealth of sources, interviews, and information from other cases. However, my great privilege was being able to work with the women of Sepulsarco, being able to get to know them, learn from them, and share a bit of their life was a life-changing experience. Hearing the details of their lives, of their parents' lives, their life story in farms of Alta Verapaz, where they were born, and how they broke the chains of that system of forced labor was inspiring. However, their lives also show the pain and helplessness they experience at the slow justice system that operates in Guatemala. The development of this case was also proof of how many times judges are racist and disconnected from reality. In the beginning, many demanded scientific proof from the bodies of the women when the rapes happened 30 years earlier. For the Guatemalan system, the members of the army were not guilty if the women did not prove that army had used sexual violence against them. During this process, I learned that for indigenous women, the psychological damage, the diseases, the destruction of their communities, the murder of their husband and son are not enough proof for the racist and colonialist justice system. A system that demands more and more proof to determine the veracity of indigenous women's narrative as a measure to deny justice. Hence, working in this case allowed me to view and get to know a justice system that legitimizes impunity and denies crimes against humanity and genocide happened against unarmed indigenous communities. Overall, it has been frustrating, infuriating, and sad experience, but also an eye-opening one. After contributing as a research and academic to the legal process, which including testify as an expert witness at the Secursarco trial on February 18 by presenting a cultural expertise for 3 hours, several questions have surfaced in my mind that I want to share with you. These are questions that have been brewing in my mind in recent years, but more insistently since the trial of genocide against General José Efraín Ríos Montt and General Mauricio Rodríguez Sánchez. That trial was held 3 years ago in 2013. On May 10 of that year, Ríos Montt was found guilty of genocide against the Ixil people. But the Constitutional Court annulled the sentence 10 days later on procedural grounds. During the last 3 years, we have faced the collapse of some of the steps taken to combat impunity in matters related to human rights, in part due to an alliance among the small but powerful economic elite, the political sector that controls Guatemala, the military responsible for crimes against humanity, and organized crime that control the main institution in the country. These 4 sectors have joined forces because they need a country with fragile institutions to maintain impunity and keep indigenous people in poverty so they continue providing cheap labor. This is a shocking reality, and yet the crisis only intensified on April of last year when the International Commission Against Impunity in Guatemala denounced the existence of a complex structure of fraud led by the president and the vice president of the country and supported by a complex networks that operate within the state. And thus, the complex reality of my country made me wonder if, in the midst of the corruption, violence, mass migration of the thousands of children and young people with or without a family looking to reach this country, can the social science serve as an instrument to help bring justice to a small Central American country that continues to reproduce impunity that affect the poorest, making them as a subject without rights and without a future? The first set of the question is related to methodology, to which I have been wondering. Which methodological tools should we use to carry out a committed and activist research in regions trying to stand up after genocide? How do we work in areas of armed conflict where those who manage to survive do not know if it is a privilege or disgrace to stay alive after everything the Civil War robbed them of? How do we conduct interviews with survivors when sometimes the last thing they want is to remember and with or question we force them relive the events over and over again? Many times during my work in Guatemala, I wonder what is the appropriate methodology to deal with the subject of mass violence, one that does not continue to perpetually victimize survivors of crimes against humanity. In 2005, I returned to Guatemala and started working with indigenous people in political advocacy process, seeking to transform some areas of the state institutions. There, I found that most meetings, without meaning to do so, ended by addressing the issue of human losses and wounds left behind the Civil War. In many cases, indigenous collectives did not want to know how to develop a logical framework or budgeting needed for access to funds from the international cooperation. What they wanted was to know whether some of those funds could be used to find their loved one. The second set of the question relates to the positioning that I as a research should or can take in the practice of the construction or translation of the memory of survivors into the language demanded by the justice system in the country. In my case, I have questioned my relative privilege in terms of access to an education and of having survived the Civil War. Given this, many times I wonder how to deal with the emotions, the sense of awareness, the anger I feel when I work documenting crimes against humanity, knowing that I share the same racial identity as the survivors. Several times, while working on the expert report, I understood how my privilege and my access to an education helped me to survive the Civil War and the sexual violence. I too am an indigenous woman, and yet I was never raped. My family was not murdered, and my community did not disappear. With every woman I interviewed, I felt emotionally drained. Every trip to the community dragged me to an inner silence, and I felt angry about being born in a corrupt and bloody country. Especially because I felt that every woman I interviewed was part of my family. At times, I found it hard to maintain the line required by academia and its research system because these were not only survivors, they were women in whom I saw reflect the colonial history of oppression that shaped the life of indigenous women since the conquest in 1524. So given this reality for me, it was impossible to position myself merely as a researcher or an academic. The third set of the question relates to the utility of the research that is conducted, data on genocide, human and cultural destruction, the brutal sexual violence documented in the community of the Pursarco, violence that led members of the military to rape women immediately after killing their husband, raping them in front of their children or other members of their community. Some, despite being pregnant, crosses the line of reason and makes me question the humanity of the perpetrators. And yet the survivors, most of whom are monolingual and cannot read or write, find the courage to testify regardless of their vulnerable condition and extreme poverty. And so I ask, how can the research we do make sure that sexual violence against indigenous women is punished and can become a precedent for the country and for the history of the mankind? Can our work help dismantle the aberrations that the state institutions exercise and that violate the basic principles of life, human rights, and access to justice? My experience as an expert witness is that the demand from survivors of acts of state violence are also moral, because we cannot build a society by sweeping the crimes under the rug. Peaceful coexistence requires and demands the proper prosecution of all those who in one way or another violate the fundamental right of any person and ethnic group. Given these scenarios, where the struggle is no longer in the battlefield but in the courts, to what point can the social science be truly committed and not contain their work to so-called safe areas, increasingly imposed by universities, and that imply a disconnect from the communities facing acts of aggression on their lives and their territories? Can academic work be extended beyond a master thesis or doctoral dissertation? And how can we create strategies for continued support and accompaniment of a communities or collective long after a book or dissertation is published about said group? In the middle of this global economic system, one that sustains an oppressive apparatus that is constantly committing crimes against humanity, that continue empowering the elites while it seeks to erase the memory of indigenous people, perhaps the general question should be, how can academia be useful to help achieve justice for those who have faced crimes against humanity, and not simply turn the survivor into expression of compassion to facilitate an academic career? Since I don't have concrete answer to any of these questions, I bring them to you so they can help us question our path and our work. Thank you so much.
Muy buenas tardes. Yo no hablo inglés. Creo que la próxima vez me voy a lanzar voy a quitar la timidez. Todavía no lo puedo, no he vencido la timidez de no hablar en inglés. Pues yo estoy muy contenta y muy agradecida con Emiliana, pues aparte de que es una colega intelectual indígena, también es una amiga, y pues celebro mucho que se abran estos espacios en los cuales pues podamos poner a discusión las ideas que producimos a través de las luchas en las cuales participamos.
Good afternoon, everybody. I will not speak in English. Maybe next time I will overcome my shyness, but I am not ready yet, so forgive me. I'm very glad to be here, and I'm very thankful, especially to my colleague and friend Emiliana, also an Indigenous scholar. And I celebrate spaces like this one that open up discussions to share ideas that are produced through the struggles we live in.
También este foro creo yo que permite la presentación de distintas aristas de analizar, pensar y criticar lo que se entiende como lo indígena o mujeres indígenas, y que no hay, digamos, una sola ruta, sino que más bien son como un campo de tensiones múltiples que muestran distintas formas de habitar el mundo, y en este caso pues Guatemala.
I also want to point out that this forum allows us to do a presentation of the different axes of thought, of analysis, and of criticism as to what does it mean to be indigenous, what does it mean to be an indigenous woman. And there is not one simple route to take, but it is multiple tensions that show that there's many different ways to live in this world and also in Guatemala.
Yo voy a trabajar acerca de la política del deseo. Le pedí a Emiliana que de eso quería yo hablar, acerca de las distintas estrategias, tácticas y cálculos que las mujeres indígenas realizan y producen en tierras comunales, donde su objetivo es no perder la tierra comunal o producir estrategias para la herencia comunal de la tierra.
I also will be talking tonight about the politics of desire. I told Emiliana I wanted to talk about this, about the strategies, the tactics and calculations that indigenous women go through in order to defend their community lands, not to lose them, but also to find ways on inheritance of the land that is communitarian based.
Y para ello voy a hacer un par de acotaciones, lo más sintético posible. Voy a leer, entonces vamos a hacer como dos párrafos.
Cuando leas, pues dale, me lees y luego me lo pasas.
Vale, bueno. Entonces comienzo con la pregunta en esta acotación acerca de pensar lo indígena en clave comunal. ¿Por qué pensar lo indígena en clave comunal? Porque esta es una pregunta que me permite exhibir que a lo largo de más de 500 años las mujeres y los hombres indígenas de los territorios comunales han defendido sus territorios, han recuperado los bienes que han querido arrebatarles, han limitado los proyectos liberales que buscaban convertirlos en pequeños propietarios para aniquilar los amaq. Amaq se llama en quiché a las estructuras de gobierno y de tierras comunales. La pugna ha sido constante, y mientras las comunidades crean sus formas de resistir a la expropiación, producen estrategias jurídico-político comunales para defender y controlar los medios concretos para su vida cotidiana, organizan masivas fiestas comunales y religiosas, realizan peticiones para pedir la lluvia o para agradecer la cosecha. Se autorregulan, ya que en varias ocasiones, cuando lo amerita, destituyen a sus autoridades si incumplen o si desvían las decisiones producidas en la asamblea.
So in order to achieve this purpose, I wanted to address a couple of points. And the first one starts with the question of why use indigenous community as a key to talk about land. And the question I have here is, it allows me to exhibit that what over 500 years men and women of indigenous descent, the Chumekena, from their communities have defended their territories, and they have recovered the goods that have been taken away from them. They have been limited to liberal projects that sought to convert them, transform them into small landowners to get rid or destroy the AMAC. The AMAC is a government structure that is based on the land, and this extension, this fight, has been a constant element in our history. While communities create their forms of resistance to expropriation, they also produce strategies that are political and legal to defend and control the concrete media for their daily lives. They organize massive festivals that are religious and communal. They realize petitions to ask for rain or to thank for the harvest. They self-regulate because in various occasions when it is necessary, they destitute their authorities if they do not fulfill or if they carry away from the results that have been produced at the assemblies.
En esta clave comunal de la política, yo identifico por lo menos tres técnicas políticas amalgamadas. El trabajo comunal para producir los medios concretos para la reproducción de la vida, la producción de la asamblea, la producción de la decisión vía la asamblea y las alianzas patrimoniales para defender y ocupar la tierra comunal.
So in order to address this political community key, I focus on three political techniques. I have identified these three main ones. The first one is communitarian labor, how we work as a community to reproduce life. Also the decision making by means of an assembly, and also the patrilineal alliances in order to maintain the land within the community's hands.
Yo pienso críticamente el parentesco como una estrategia defensiva y por lo tanto contradictoria de términos de defensa de tierras comunales.
Kinship, thank you. I think that kinship is a key in the defense of these communal lands.
Okay. En otras conferencias ya aquí mismo he hablado sobre la importancia y la vitalidad que tiene el trabajo comunal como la medida social de articulación en la vida comunitaria y también eso ligado plenamente a la producción de la decisión. Ahora me voy a dedicar a pensar críticamente el parentesco más allá de una estrategia para cuidar la tierra comunal.
In other elsewhere and also in conferences here, I have already spoken about the importance of the social measure to articulate life in the community and how that is linked to the political decision making. But today I want to focus on kinship.
La herencia de la tierra la herencia y defensa de la tierra comunal ligada a una estructura de parentesco produce poderosos efectos en la conservación de la cohesión interna y a la vez tiene efectos de inhibición de la fuerza de las mujeres, pues establece que tenemos que organizar la reproducción de la vida únicamente desde el formato matrimonial acotado, para incluirnos en la trama más general de la reproducción y conservación del acceso de tierras y bienes comunales.
Thank you. The heritage of the inheritance of the land and the defense of the land, communal land, has been linked to a structure of kinship that produces powerful effects on the conservation of an internal cohesion, as it also has effects of inhibition of the strength of women, because it establishes that we have to organize the reproduction of life only from the format of the marriage, so that we can be included in a more general weaving of reproduction and conservation of the access to the land and to communal lands.
El matrimonio como única forma de organizar la reproducción de la vida es un problema que compartimos una gran cantidad de mujeres. Es una dificultad en términos materiales y simbólicos, que van desde los nudos que se expresan en el régimen que registra la propiedad y los bienes por los que el hombre y la mujer trabajan, hasta la tutela de los hijos. La carga simbólica que se tiene al procrear hijos sin padres, el lugar diferenciado donde la sociedad coloca a las mujeres que no deciden reproducirse bajo el formato matrimonial, etc. No me detendré a discutir la gran cantidad de luchas que en todos los esfuerzos de transformación social y política ocurridas en el siglo XX en diferentes países y continentes fueron desplegados por miles de mujeres que trataron de alterar y modificar las rígidas relaciones de subordinación y control inscritas bajo códigos matrimoniales. ¿Sigo? ¿O quieres ver?
The marriage as the only way to organize the reproduction of life is a problem that we share with a great many women in this world. It is hard in terms of material and symbolic terms, because it is from those nodal points that gets expressed what kind of structure you can access property, goods, and the man and the woman work, but even it affects the custody of the children, the symbolic effects of having a child without a father, or the differentiated place where society places women who decide to reproduce in a format beyond marriage. I will not stop here to discuss the great amount of struggles that in the efforts to transform life politically and socially throughout the 20th century in many different countries and continents, that was carried out by thousands of women who attempted to alter and modify the rigid relationships of subordination and control inscribed under the marriage code.
Por ejemplo, el texto de Wendy Wollman, La mujer, el Estado y la revolución, en el cual la autora da cuenta de los esfuerzos en el periodo inmediatamente posterior a la Revolución Rusa de 1917, cuando critica la estructura familiar y al matrimonio como la base de la familia y la sujeción del cuerpo de las mujeres al control del marido, alcanzó una radicalidad solo comparable a la belicosa reacción que durante el estalinismo buscó situar a las mujeres una vez más como productoras de hijos de la patria, confinándolas en un régimen familiar reproducido. Lamentablemente la crítica a la estructura familiar y al formato matrimonial ha quedado capturada durante los últimos años en el camino de la búsqueda de los derechos de la igualdad, aunque, como menciona Silvia Gil, una académica joven española, habla del feminismo de tercera ola, donde hay un nuevo cuestionamiento a la forma familia y al matrimonio expresado en términos de luchas contra la heteronormatividad.
So I would like to take the people who are interested in that to a book that has already been extensively studied, Wendy Goldman's Women, State and Revolution, in which the author takes into account the efforts in the period that immediately followed the Russian Revolution in 1917, and where the criticism of the family structure and marriage as the basis of the family puts into subjection the bodies of women who are under the control of the husband, and it reached level of radicalism that has only been comparable to the war or bellicose reaction that followed during the Stalinism, because it sought to place women once again as the reproducers of the children of the fatherland, confining them to a structure of a family that has been even more raw. Unfortunately, the criticism to the structure of the family and to the format of marriage has been captured during the last years in the path to look for human equal rights. Even though, as Sylvia Hill mentions, and she talks about the feminism of a third wave feminism, there is a new questioning of the the shape of the family and marriage as expressed in terms of struggle against heteronormativity.
Lo que mencioné anteriormente es para dejar claro que las dificultades que las mujeres indígenas enfrentamos en la trama comunal, en tanto el parentesco se organiza a través de linajes patrilineales, no es más que una variante al problema general que un sinfín de mujeres confrontamos en la actualidad. Y digamos, y es mi problema. Abordaré desde la singularidad de mi ser mujer indígena el problema que se impregna al sistema de gobierno comunal indígena al que pertenezco. El problema específico con el que me enfrento, o con el que nos enfrentamos las mujeres indígenas que vivimos en tierras comunales, consiste en que la reproducción de la vida y la transmisión de la herencia comunal de la tierra se hace en clave patrilineal. Ello nos coloca en un lugar en el cual somos empujadas, tal vez no somos empujadas, a realizar estrategias matrimoniales de manera acotada frente a portadores de los apellidos que compraron y defendieron la tierra comunal en 1870.
So I previously mentioned the difficulty in the family parents and how it is a variant to a general problem, but it is here also my problem. And so I mentioned this because it is my interest to make very clear that the difficulties that Indigenous women face also in terms of kinship is organized through patrilineal lineages, and it is so I will address this problem from the singularity of my being as an Indigenous woman, and that this problem impregnates, pero es que no es tal cual igual, permeates, that's a way better one, yeah, permeates the system of government to the one that I belong. Okay. The specific problem that we face as Indigenous women consists in the reproduction of life and the transmission of communal heritage of the land, and it becomes a patrilineal key that places us to be pushed, and sometimes even more than pushed, to achieve marriage strategies in a way that forces us to carry the last names of those who bought and defended the communal land.
En ese sentido, yo lo que intento hacer de aquí en adelante es establecer distinciones de cómo las mujeres habitamos el mundo comunal, y establezco tres categorías. La primera es: si una mujer hace contrato matrimonial con un hombre con apellidos de la trama histórica que conserva la tierra, si realiza un matrimonio con un hombre que no pertenece a tales apellidos, o si no realiza contrato matrimonial para qué hace. En cada una de las situaciones antes descritas, el horizonte de las mujeres comunales al interior de la trama de reproducción será frágil, aunque la dificultad será distinta en cada caso. Una mujer que hace una estrategia matrimonial con un portador de apellido histórico negociará al interior de su familia su posición, que siempre sería mediada por su marido. Por otro lado, en el caso de una mujer cuya estrategia matrimonial no se realiza en el marco de los apellidos históricos, en caso de pertenecer a la trama comunal, tendrá una difícil posición, pues su marido no será fácilmente reconocido dentro de la trama, pero ella sí, es la mujer la que inaugura la herencia inaugura una línea de heredabilidad, y no es el marido. Y en el tercer puesto es aquel en el cual una mujer no hace contrato matrimonial para establecer una nueva unidad reproductiva, y en el caso de que esta mujer tenga hijos, tanto ella como su progenie gozarán de las prerrogativas y beneficios que brinda la trama comunal, aunque contra todo ello se confrontará violencia simbólica ejercida desde un orden simbólico patriarcal que las colocará como mujeres sin hombres o como hijos sin hijos.
So if you go into a marriage contract with a man who has the last names that have been related to the historical plot. All right, so we're going to identify that's 3 ways in which women inhabit in this community. So the first one is through this marriage contract with a man whose last names are related to the historical plot. The second one is if you carry out the marriage with this man that does not belong to these last names. And the third one, if you do not engage in any contract in order to reproduce. In each one of these situations, the horizon of community women inside the plot of reproduction will be frail. Even the difficulty will be different in each case. A woman that has a marriage strategy with a carrier of a historical name will be able to negotiate within her family her position, and it will always be mediated by her husband. On the other hand, the woman whose marriage strategy is not framed within the historical last names, in the case of belonging to a community weaving, will have a very difficult position because her husband will not easily be recognized within this historical plot. The third situation in which a woman does not engage in marriage as a contract to establish a new reproductive unity, in the case that this woman chooses to have children, her as well as her children will enjoy the prerogatives and benefits that are offered by the communitarian plot, even though they will all be facing symbolic violence that is exerted from a symbolic order that is patriarchal and that will place women and men as children without a father. Trama colonial, Manuela. La trama como... No.
5 minutos. Quedan 2 minutos. Bueno, pues ahora en ese sentido, entonces, el problema de las mujeres indígenas, propongo no analizarlo bajo el paranalítico inclusión-exclusión propio de la cultura liberal, sino más bien intento pensarlo a la luz de